This is the Mojo, the Meaning of Life and Business podcast, where life and business intersect. Hosted by Jennifer Glass, CEO of Business Growth Strategies International and BGSI Coaching. We are dedicated to your success. Hello and welcome to another episode of Mojo, the Meaning of Life and Business. On today's program, we're going to be talking about profitability and looking at what your costs are in your business. It is extremely important when you're looking at your business to really understand how your costs impact your overall profitability, your operations of the business, and what you can do to really make sure that things are going to work in your favor as opposed to against you. And so I've got a really incredible guest on the show today. And before I bring Kevin in, let me tell you a little bit about Kevin so that you know why Kevin is such a great guest to talk with us about watching our costs today. Kevin O'Shaughnessy is the owner of Schooley Mitchell of Red Bank. Kevin works with mid to large-sized companies to improve their profitability with proven cost reduction strategies. Kevin brings over 30 years of experience specializing in finance, sales and trading, and general management. His diverse Wall Street experience includes working for banking stalwarts, well-regarded hedge funds, ultimately, really though, fighting to bring the best price for his clients to everything that he does. Kevin, thank you so much for being my guest today and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jennifer. You're making me sound pretty good there. I like that intro. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Kevin, let me ask you, there's so much that you've done in your broad experience from what you've done. What is it, though, that really makes you tick?
What I'm most passionate about, really, truly, is efficiency, and it's efficiency across all aspects of a business. So whether the process is correct, and then also the pricing on things. We find a lot of times these days, people start like maybe even dumpsters out behind their building. 7-10 years ago, they signed up for it and they just kind of forgot about it. Just keep paying the bill instead of checking around.
And that's really interesting that you say that. I know that I've worked with some of my clients and I told them, look at all of the bills that you get, especially the recurring ones. And I'm using that exact advice today because I just got a notice of a renewal of one of my services that I use. And I have to call the company and, well, they told me just call us anytime you got one of these bills. And as long as you call, we can do something about it. But if you don't, nothing's going to happen. And so I know if I simply do an online chat with them or I call them, it's going to have that reduction that they can apply to what I'm doing. But it's exactly that idea. There's so many things that we get in our business that we completely forget about. The bill is maybe hitting our credit card or our bank account. We don't even see the statement come in, or maybe it's a paperless statement if they're doing something like that, and we just forget about it. But before we jump into that, though, what makes you so interested in cost reduction? I mean, that's got to be, for businesses, it's extremely important. But I know when we were talking prior, you were sharing a couple of examples of who Kevin is and some of the idiosyncrasies, if you will, of what makes you, you, and how that really helps with that cost reduction strategy. Do you want to just share with us that we all hear that? Because I think that's going to help people understand more how that's going to really make that impact.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So, some people are just wired that way, right? You're just always looking for the best deal. And I think for me, it was growing up. One of my first jobs was working in a Pathmark supermarket, and I was stocking shelves overnight. So I was obsessed with putting up what we used to call packing the most, boxes. So I always wanted to be the best, the fastest. But now also you have to remember, here I am on my knees in a grocery store stocking the shelves, and those little tags, those little unit price things, right? So it just became ingrained in my brain. I started processing things. Wait a minute. Oh, if you know what, if I buy, two of the smaller ones, it's actually more volume that's went in the larger can and it's cheaper. Those little yellow signs you see sometimes, like say pasta sauce. Oh, hey, it's 3 for $5. What you didn't see is the one next to it, which is a smaller orange sign that says this other jar is $1.50 each. So I can buy 3 of those for $4.50. But people like the shiny sign. People don't look at the unit price. And I get it. Not people aren't going to buy 4 quarts of milk because it's cheaper than the gallon, right? That I get it. There's some silliness to it. Some people also are just brand loyal. Like, for example, me, I have to buy Hellmann's mayonnaise. I have to buy Heinz ketchup. So when I work with my clients, if they have a particular vendor or a system or a process that they're using and they're just married to it for whatever reason, that's okay. I get it. But let's work on the things that you can be flexible with.
So you kind of spilled some of the secrets of retail psychology in there in terms of how do you get people to buy, and that's for a different show in terms of an idea with the end caps and all of those other issues that come up with what we're looking at. But it's really funny that you mentioned, though, if you look at the unit price, what you're actually paying starts making a big difference. Let's translate that, though, to a business. And we kind of mentioned the dumpster that may be behind the building that you're paying the waste management company that is picking up your trash, the recycling, whatever it may be. And so as we're looking, though, at how it relates to a business, let's talk about the importance here. There's so many levels of things that a business is using, whether it's the computer that you and I are using right now to communicate with each other, if it's the video conferencing tool that we're using right now to talk with each other, if it's the internet service that we're using to talk with each other, and going all the way to the really simple things like the pen that we use to take notes or the pad that we use to actually write on. So there's a lot of different things that we have in terms of our business that we need to be looking at how much we're spending or investing on, depending on how you look at it. But there's other things, though, that we can really control a little bit more. And I know that you specialize in only a handful of those areas, but can you give us an idea why it's so important to really look at what we're actually putting our money toward and how that makes a difference to our bottom lines?
Well, absolutely. These days, we're always so sales driven. And I get that. We should be. We should always strive, to sell more of our product, get more, ourselves out there. So you see a lot of people push on marketing. Hey, I'm going to do your social media marketing. I'm going to do this print ad. I'm going to help you with your SEO, and you're going to come up in the first page of Google. And that's great. You do have to increase your sales, and that's important to have a budget for that. But the difference people forget is you'll probably have to increase your sales by $100,000 to add 15,000 back to your bottom line, right? Depending on your margin. Whereas if I can find you $100,000 in savings, that's $100,000 right back to the bottom line. So there's just different avenues. You have to look at both sides of things, and I get that. The problem also comes from a lot of businesses where the person paying the bills, whether it's say an office manager, facilities manager, maybe even just a bookkeeper, there's no incentive for that person. They're just paying the bill. There's no incentive for that person to bring up and say, hey, I wonder when's the last time we shopped around, our dumpster bill. When's the last time we looked at maybe getting a new phone system here? Like maybe you're not up to the latest technology. So I just think people get caught up in the sales side of things, and I think that they should somewhat, but they're forgetting that other part, which actually adds a lot more back to the bottom line than increasing sales. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And when we look at that dumpster sale, or we look at the different ways in which we are looking at all of these different pieces, and like you said, depending on your margins, if you are selling $100,000 worth of your product, you may only be putting $15,000, $30,000 into your bottom line after you take the costs and the overhead and things along those lines into account. But when you can save on the services that you're paying for and you're not suffering any customer experience issue, then all of a sudden it becomes bottom line revenue, not just top line revenue. And so there's that big difference in terms of what you can do. So when we look then at overall, all right, so we've got the savings now. What else, though, can we do to ensure that we're not getting into these introductory offers? Because so many companies offer these introductory deals. Come to us, and for the first 3 months, 6 months, a year, we're going to give you whatever it is. I know as a consumer, looking at the residential gas and electric companies, you get all of these solicitations, and they send them to the businesses too. Mm-hmm. Telecom offer the exact same idea. Come to us, we're going to give you X number of lines at a ridiculously reduced rate for a certain period of time, and then after that, we'll re-examine. How do you, though, ensure that whatever it is you're doing, you're not on this constant cycle of needing to re-examine? Or do you need to re-examine after every year in terms of what you're doing with some of these vendors and the options that you have?
Well, the great part about working with someone like myself, which I like to say, I'm an independent business consultant. Independent meaning I am vendor agnostic, whereas a lot of times somebody may come in and they'll say, I'm a telecom consultant. They're getting paid by the service provider or the manufacturer of the phones. I only share in any savings I find for you. So my incentive is to find you the best deal, that I can. So to save you the most money. And I would certainly alert my client of, hey, you have to keep this in mind. This is a 6-month kind of a teaser rate. We're going to adjust that in 6 months and take a look. The other great part about my service, though, is I continue to monitor that bill. So I become that single point of contact for whether it's waste, whether it's telecom, whether it's small package shipping. So I monitor at least on a quarterly basis, depending on the size of the client, sometimes monthly. So yeah, any change in rate, I'm going to know about immediately, and I'm going to be on the phone, to not customer service, to a management level representative that we have relationships with to make sure the client isn't, getting, screwed over a little bit by that rate going up after a teaser. So, it really offers the client a peace of mind that someone's on top of this, someone is paying attention, and it frees them up to do what they should be doing, which is working on their business.
And like you're saying, working on the business, not working in the business, is so important that too many entrepreneurs and business owners forget. You don't want to be working in the business, it's working on the business, because that's how you start having systems and you start having successes that allow you to step away from the business and not be the one actually running the day-to-day operations of the business. And think about it. If you walked into any of the major fast food burger places, how often do you see the owner? You really don't. It's designed to run without them there because there's systems in place that you can allow other people to take it over. And that's where someone like having you, Kevin, come in and ensure that even in these fast food burger places, you can work with them to still make sure that the dumpster out back or the telecom service that they're using, things along those lines, that's actually coming through in a way that is going to allow them to be adding even more to their bottom line. And that's really without sacrificing any customer experience issue, the user experience. And that's really important, right? The user experience.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you a quick example. I have a restaurant client, and he's a very personable guy, friendly, knows his patrons that come in there. So I guess several years ago when he ordered the dumpster outside, they didn't have the size he needed. So he's got 3 4-yard dumpsters. So I get to the site and I'm like, why are there 3? Like, you got plenty of room here. Why isn't there, so we just got him 1 10-yard, saved him percentage wise, 60%. I was like, and that kind of thing, like it makes sense. He's front of the house, right? He's out there, he's smoozing with the patrons are coming in, the diners. He doesn't have time to be thinking about the dumpster out back, right? He needs to be working, like you say, on his business. He needs to be the face of that business. It's not a burger joint, sure. That guy's probably just got a manager. But say the owner of a restaurant, even though if he has a manager, I bet you he's there a few nights a week, shaking hands and saying hi to people. And the last thing he wants to worry about is what happened to the dumpster, So, and I asked him, he said, well, at the time they didn't have it. They promised me they were going to swap it out. Nobody ever called. Nobody ever cared. They didn't do it. So, that's the kind of stuff we find. So that's sometimes that could be more of the optimization of what we're doing, especially through the pandemic. We found a lot of clients that were still paying for phone lines that were just not necessary anymore, right? This hybrid situation of people working at home or just fewer people working, they're paying for things they don't need. And that's a big part of it. You, like you were saying, you just keep paying the bill, right? You forget about it and you get caught up, you're doing other things. If you want to even just make the analogy of it on a personal level, right? I'm sure your cable bill at home, right? Every year it goes up and sneaks up and you say, I'm going to call them. I'm going to get that lowered. Same thing with probably your cell phone bill. You probably have a credit card that the first year they gave you for free, and then it was $90 a year after, and then you forgot, and you're still paying that $90. So that's the kind of thing we help out with, but obviously on a bigger level.
Right, and it's all about those consumer psychology. And even if you don't think you're a consumer because you're a business in this case, you still are a consumer because you're consuming whatever product it is that the business is selling you. And so the consumer psychology is very often, we don't like change. We don't like confrontation for the most part, unless you're an attorney and you love litigating. That's a whole other story. And a lot of us are in the position where we will purposely go out of our way to avoid just having to deal with stuff because it's a lot easier, whatever it is, it's there. I know it works and I'm not going to rock the boat. And when we look, though, at what we really need to do in our businesses, like Kevin, you were saying, we really need to look at all of these different pieces. How does it impact our daily operations? How does it impact our profitability? How does it impact our pricing? And in the high inflationary world that we are living in today, the 40-year high that we're living in as of the time of this recording, hopefully it doesn't get any worse as we continue moving forward, but we're expecting, as the day of this recording, we're expecting to hear last month's inflation numbers being almost 9%. And that's just obscene. And looking at the Chinese lockdowns that are currently going on due to COVID in China with the zero COVID policy is going to further disrupt the supply chain. And so watching all of our costs are going to be even more important in terms of what we're going to be doing because that things are going to continue getting more expensive when there's even less supply in the market. So how does that come down, though, to translating if I'm looking at my telecom service? Is that going to make a difference with what the supply chain market may be like, or is that really not dependent on what the global supply chain is? And I know I picked telecom as an example, but I mean in terms of all of the things that you look at, how is that going to make a difference? And you mentioned shipping also, because that's obviously going to be dependent on supply chain, and any of the major carriers look at the fuel surcharges and things like that. And I want to touch on that really quick after you answer this question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really haven't been affected greatly by the supply chain and things I do. Because like, for example, on the telecom side of things, there's plenty of supply here for the voice over internet protocol equipment. And a lot of times the client doesn't even need any equipment. Their laptop or PC or even their cell phone becomes, their office phone. I'm sure you have the same thing. You have an app on your phone, your business rings on your cell phone. So that part hasn't been an issue. There has been some issues with some routers, some switches, when you're talking about a new build out, say for someone, but they're having some trouble getting some of that equipment. But overall, for me, knock on wood, for my clients on just the telecom side, supply chain has not been an issue. And we find that the carriers, there's more of these guys out there. The carriers are becoming more aggressive in their pricing, so that's an important thing. And the other thing I like to say to my clients is you have to remember, I'm not a salesman. I'm not trying to sell you a certain type of equipment or a service. I'm just working with you to find the best value, the best suitable value for you and your business, so whereas if you find another, salesman he's truly trying to sell you a particular phone system or that type of thing. And then on the other things I look at, like say, we talk about waste, all our dumpsters are here. We're not necessarily waiting for any, new dumpsters, from somewhere. On the small package shipping side, that is exactly a great one to look at because there are a lot of surcharges coming down the pipe from UPS, from FedEx. So we can make sure that those are properly priced in because, we're on top of that and always watching what they're doing. If you're a smaller company, we can put you as part of an association and get you better rates. And the other thing is we have proprietary software that those bills get run through every month to make sure there are no errors. A lot of times people are sending a FedEx overnight, right? It's supposed to be there by 10 a.m. Shows up at 10 after 10. Your client didn't care. It was 10 after 10. You didn't look at the bill. Nobody said anything, right? We look at it. That got there at 10:10. You know what? You're not paying for that one. And that's something that's a big help. So, something like that isn't affected necessarily by the supply chain, but it's just we have the time and the technology to look at that sort of thing. And then one of the other categories we haven't mentioned yet that I look at is merchant services or electronic payment processing, which is another very, very tedious kind of a bill that you might get to see how every card was processed that you accepted payment for. So that's another big category where we can help with our technology.
And full disclosure, that's one of the services that we provide.
Nope.
And so we completely understand the merchant services aspect and how it does get confusing. As an example, there's one of those interesting setups, and it really only works with one of the major platforms, but that's the enhanced rate recovery or ERR pricing. For any of you that ever get an application where they're telling you, oh yeah, it's only 1%, be very careful about that because it may not be exactly how you're thinking about it. And it can get a little bit confusing in terms of what you're doing. So you can talk with Kevin, you can talk with us in terms of exactly what you're doing in that regard on the merchant side from what you're doing. But as we look though at your business model specifically, Kevin, what size business is typically in your sweet spot in terms of number of employees, number of offices? What is it that really makes the most sense if someone is listening right now and saying, you know what, I really want to see, am I getting the best possible rate? Is there a particular magic number that says, I got to talk with Kevin instead of trying to do it on their own? What is it that's going to make them say, I have to reach out to Kevin right now?
Yeah, and for that, there's a few different metrics. And really what it comes down to is how much is a business, spending on these categories I work on with. So, and I only put these metrics, these minimums on it just because for them to vote their time, for me to vote my time, it just doesn't make sense unless if it's lower than that. So say, for example, if you're spending at least $1,000 a month on telecom of some kind, and that could be a combination of cell phones and landlines and maybe your internet. Same thing for waste. We'll go down to say 750. At least you're spending $750 a month or more. For the merchant services, as you know, it doesn't make sense on smaller size. So for us, I don't know where you guys look at, but for us, we want at least 20,000 a month that they're taking in that sort of a situation. So I guess the answer is I'll talk to anyone because I just like to meet people, and I think I could always offer some piece of advice that may help them along the way. The other part though is I guess so it's a spend, but as I'm finding more and more clients, I would say it's typically a business with at least 20 to 25 employees. And then it can be upwards of maybe 500. Once you get larger than that, there's generally, a pretty hands-on CFO or maybe even a whole, budget committee or team that's looking at that. So once you get larger, they generally don't bring in someone like me. So let's just say 25 to 500 type of a business. Certainly a multi-location is a great client for me because generally speaking, they're not, it's not like across all locations. So I can get them, a single billing for telecom, single billing for waste, and just really eliminate some of that waste that they're doing,
So do you work with procurement officers too in helping them figure out how to lower that bill? I know a lot of procurement officers, that's typically what they're job is all about. It's not that office manager or bookkeeper that simply pays the bill. It's really someone who's going and bidding things out. But are you getting involved with them as well if there are procurement officers?
I've worked with them, but a lot of times the procurement officer is like I say, is doing more of the getting the supplies for the business, right? Making sure that they have, if they're a manufacturer, to make sure they have the product, that they need to manufacture what they're doing. So generally for me, it's more of like, say, a facilities manager, an office manager, say for a medical office. Like I have a couple of multi-location dentists, multi-location urgent care, multi-location doctor's office. So generally there's an office manager. There's someone sort of in charge of all of that. But procurement's more of like someone, like the person who's buying, say, the rubber gloves for the doctor's office, the one who's buying the notepads or things like that. So what I can do for them is just offer, if they don't have it already, offer key introductions for people who really do that sort of a thing. And I'm always happy to do that. And Jennifer, I know you're great with that as well. Always making a proper introduction. Always happy to, share a good friend who and trust will help that client. So, on that side of things, that's all I really do is maybe, obviously talk with them, but then just maybe make an introduction where necessary.
So as we look at where we go from here, I know that people that may be interested in speaking with you and finding out now that they know they are exactly in your target market. They've got those spend levels that you mentioned in the various categories, or they have multiple locations and they're really not clear on their billing. How can they start working with you or find out more about you?
Well, it's easy to find me on LinkedIn. I also have my website. I think I shared with you. It's schooleymitchell.com. It's / K O'Shaughnessy. I think you can Google me and find me, I think, pretty easily. And then as far as, the process, we do have a service agreement, which we ask people to sign. It's a small, couple 2-page document. And it basically says 5 things. It says, you want me to do the audit. You're going to give me the information to do the audit. And that's really just the last 3 months invoices and such like that. It says, I'm going to show you my calculations, right? So we're going to come up with that base price and all agree this is what you are currently paying. The 4th thing is the client always has final to say, go or no go. So I can come back to someone with 60% savings. And if they feel that that's too cumbersome or it doesn't fit them at the moment or whatever it may be, they can just say, no, I can't do it. No, sorry, Kevin, we can't do it right now. And I walk away still, no fees attached to that whatsoever. And then the final thing, of course, it'll say is, hey, don't do anything to harm me, or the Schooley Mitchell name. So don't try to go around me after I kind of showed you how to do things, like don't start calling, the vendors yourself. So, and that's it. Once we get the service agreement signed, maybe there's a letter of authorization so I can negotiate with your vendor. Certainly can't ever make any changes without the express written, consent of the client. People think it's going to be this, this long drawn out process. It's really not. It's just kind of getting me on the team. Once I'm on the team, we can do all our work behind the scenes. Quite often we get online access to our clients' billing, especially with something like waste, there's no proprietary information on a garbage bill, right? So, give us online access. We can pull it ourselves. You don't even have to go to your accountant or whomever and get that business, right? With small package shipping, we require the online access just because that's a crazy bill. And it's so much easier to download the file, put it right through our software and figure out, what the savings we can do there. So I would say all in all, it could take as much as, especially these days, 6 to 8 weeks. And that's really not even the fault on our side. What we're finding is when we're calling the vendors, around, they're short-staffed. So we're trying to get new pricing and different things. They're more than happy. They want new clients, but they're having trouble staffing as well and getting back to us and and putting in their bids. So all I would ask too is just maybe a little patience.
And patience is definitely a virtue when we look at what we're dealing with in the world that we're living in today. There's so many companies with the great resignation that are finding themselves short-staffed. even before the pandemic, some companies were already having problems in the customer service area to make a difference and to really properly be supporting all of the people that are looking for the help for the pricing negotiation and things along those lines, that we are all trying to figure out what we're doing. And the pandemic and everything that came after is just exacerbating the problem that was there before. And so it's really important, remember, like Kevin was saying, it can take a little bit of time to get the process to move forward. But when you are working with Kevin, you're at least going to know that you've got the horizon set and know where you're going to be going to ensure that you are going to be seeing some sort of savings with what you're doing. You're not guaranteed, because we know there's no such thing as a guarantee in life except for death and taxes. But other than that, we know, though, that there are certain things that we can really be hoping for. And Kevin is really going to be doing his best to deliver the right kind of solution for you that is not going to be impacting your user experience like we spoke about, and hopefully helping you find a way to add to your overall bottom line with that savings that Kevin is in a position to deliver for you. And so if you want to be reaching out to Kevin, he gave you the website or LinkedIn that you can go to, and that will also be in the notes for the show in the description, so you can reach out to Kevin, follow him on Facebook, LinkedIn, his website, email, all of that, so that you can really be in a position to get into that conversation and start working with Kevin to ultimately get to where you want to be in what you're doing for your business and adding that money back into your bottom line. The only thing I would ask is that from that savings that you are going to be saving, consider giving a little bit back into your community. If Kevin is able to save you 60% and you're sharing some of that with Kevin, if you can give even 10% of your savings back into your community, you're really going to be making a huge difference, especially in the world that we're living in today. Whatever it is, your community, if your community is giving at the time of this recording again to the Ukrainian people to help the humanitarian situation there, if it's giving to the food pantries, if it's giving to any of the cancer foundations, to the police, to whatever it is that you are interested in, help your community with some of that savings. It's money that you didn't have yesterday that you are going to have tomorrow. So if you take just 10% of that savings and you allocate that, you also now can be a socially conscious company that you are going to be looking at, what am I doing better for the community? We're participating in the community. We're giving to the community. We're giving back. And that is how you are in a position to really start making even more of a difference. And it doesn't matter what kind of entity you have, every entity can be doing more of that. Whether you're a nonprofit, for-profit, there's so much that you can be doing. With that, Kevin, thank you so much for being my guest today. I hope that all of you that are listening really got a lot out of this and really have an idea what you can be doing. If you are too small to work with Kevin, you have a couple of ideas where you might be able to go. If you are the right kind of business to work with Kevin, definitely reach out. And if you are a bigger business and you need someone with those introductions, Kevin is happy, like he said, to at least give you a little bit of guidance, make some introductions to help you. You never know who you're going to meet that may need the help from Kevin or people just like Kevin as you are moving through life. So, Kevin, thank you once again for being my guest. On that note, this has been another episode of Mojo, the meaning of life and business. And until next time, here's to your success.
Thanks, Jennifer.
This has been another episode of Mojo, the meaning of life and business podcast. If you like what you heard, please consider leaving us a review, liking us, or reaching out to us. You can contact us at bgsicoaching.com and let us know what you think. Thanks so much again for listening.